So we're just going to start. So for those of you who don't know me, I think there's a couple of new faces here. I'm a three principles practitioner, and as a coach and practitioner, a lot of the people I work with show up with what they describe as low self-esteem. And sometimes I say there's no such thing as low self-esteem, and I say that sort of bit tongue-in-cheek because for people that suffer from it, it doesn't feel like it's not a real thing. But I think when we look in the direction of the principles, we'll really see that it doesn't have to be, as solid as it looks to us. So the reason that I am so passionate about this subject is because I used to be the poster child of low self-esteem. It's, I spent the first 50 years of my life completely, absolutely believing that I was less than, I was inferior, I was worthless, everybody else was better than me. And, like many people that suffer from low self-esteem, I grew up in a dysfunctional environment, let's put it that way. I was abused and abandoned and neglected, and therefore I felt unloved and unworthy of being loved. And so I didn't develop a really strong sense of self. I was always sort of outer referencing, looking for validation from the outside, always comparing myself to other people and always falling short. I was, spent most of my life just shy and timid and lacking self-confidence. I spent years in therapy, close to 30 years, 29 years in conventional therapy. And I calculated the cost at one point, and with all the workshops and everything I was doing, I think I was probably up to about $500,000 over all those years. Pretty, and the thing is, it helped me make sense of why I had the feelings I had. But I just couldn't get over that belief in myself that there was something, that I was different. There was something in me that was lacking. And I was also on a spiritual path for that same amount of time too. And again, I heard all these wonderful spiritual concepts like, we're all equal, we're all one, we're all, and I kept thinking, yeah, but not me. You don't know what's inside me. You don't know how I grew up. I have evidence. So that's the other thing. I had so much evidence to prove that I was worthless, that I had sort of focused in on and collected over the years. So I was pretty ensconced in that belief about myself, that there was something wrong with me. I used to feel like I used to say, like looking through a pane of glass and at the world, and everybody else out there seemed to have something I didn't have. They had confidence, they had, I don't know what it was, guts, courage, everything that I didn't think I had. It was always like looking on from from behind this glass, like not feeling like I fit in, that I belonged, or that I could manage. And even to the point, by the time I was 19, I actually considered suicide. And again, it wasn't that the world was a rotten place. There was something wrong with me. I was broken. I was lacking. I didn't have what it took to be in the world. Fortunately, I did not take my own life, as is evident, because I'm here today. But so I just was, and the other thing I did was, it was always about, if I achieve one more qualification, one more certification, one more thing, I will then find the confidence that I'm looking for. And oh my God, I joke, I say it's like my walls are plastered like with band-aids, with, this certification, that one and that one. And it never worked. It didn't. It was always, I would get one and it would always be, okay, what's next? What's next? How can I do this? And I was just sharing with my lovely friend, Jennifer, recently, that I think was it with you, Jen? I can't remember, but I was sharing that I was once in a gallery. I used to paint as well. And I couldn't even stand next to my work. All these other artists were standing next to their work and talking about what had inspired them. And I was in oh, hang on, we have somebody coming in. I was in the bathroom hiding. I couldn't face anybody. Even though people wanted to buy my work, I was like, they don't understand, they have bad taste, my work is terrible, whatever story was going on in my head. So you know, as I say, I was a successful career in Hollywood as a costume designer. I was the artist, I was a mother, I was a coach, but, you know, I felt like I was faking it. And my therapist used to say to me, I presented very well on the outside. Nobody would have known what was going through me on a daily basis, these feelings of, you know, not being good enough or low self-esteem and things like that. So that was until I came across the principles. So I just want to double check here. Who is familiar with the principles and who is new to it, if anybody is new? Oh, Jen is relatively new, and Darlene, but I know we've had a few things. So okay, so as we say in the principles, well, number one, it's a description of how we experience life. It's not a prescription of how to do life. If you do it this way, you'll have a better life. It's a prescription, and rather a description of what it is, how humans experience life. So I'm not, you all know that to a degree or another, so I'm not going to go into that. But I want to talk about two things that I saw. There's a lot that I saw, so much I saw, but I would say the two absolute life-changing things that I saw that had me showing up into life very differently and seeing myself very differently. So the two insights that I, you know, really, if I had to just boil it down to two, was one was, as I said before, I've been part of other spiritual communities. I have a master's in spiritual psychology from a place called USM. And I'd heard these terms, but I really got it when I came across the principles that we are all created equal. And the reason, I know it sounds so funny, and the reason I really got it through the principles, and I didn't get it before, was something that actually Dick and Bettinger shared. He said that Sydney Banks said this. I haven't heard it directly from any Sydney Banks tape, but what Sid apparently said was that we are 96% spiritual and only 4% human. Now, in other traditions I've studied, like Kabbalah, they say it's 99% spiritual, 1% human. It doesn't really matter the percentage, but what it points to is that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And what I like about the ratio is that it helps me remember who I am at my essence, the majority of who I am. So I always use my little snow globe here because that's what helps me remember who I am. I happen to have a little Buddha in the center of my snow globe. That the Buddha to me represents it's that sort of calm spiritual essence of who I am. And as we all know, that's who we are at our center. And just like, you know, again, I'm going to use analogy of the water, the ocean. We often say that we are all spiritually connected, just like we are like the ocean, the oceans of the waters, all connected. Now, the waves on top of the ocean, I like to see as that's how we show up in our world of form as human beings. We all look a little different. You know, some waves are bigger, some waves are flatter, some fatter, some whatever. And the same way as human beings, at our spiritual essence, we are all connected. We're all one, just like that ocean. But when we incarnate into the world of form, in our little human forms, we all show up differently. But that's just the tiniest expression of who we are. Who we are at our essence is all equal. We all come onto this planet with exactly the same amount of the essence of who we are, our spiritual nature. We all come onto this planet with the exact same amount of innate wisdom, the exact same amount of innate well-being, the exact same amount of resilience. We are all equal in that place. So what happens, even though, you know, as human beings, we sometimes get caught up in what we call our personal thinking, and we think we're just these one little individual beings on this planet. From that place, that personal thinking, we have a lot of insecurity. We have a lot of fear from that personal thinking. We do a lot of comparing from that personal thinking. So that's where we start sort of judging ourselves. We start looking around, judging ourselves and comparing ourselves to each other. We have a lot of fear, we have lack, we tend to go into the future and into the past. So can you imagine that? That's where a lot of the insecurity is in our personal thinking. And, you know, as I said, as spiritual beings in our center, who we are at our center, the majority of who we are, I mean, we're all one. We're both human and spiritual rolled into one. But the majority of who we are, the vast majority, that spiritual essence of who we are, that's where we are made of love. We are made of peace. We are made of innate well-being. We are that magnificent spiritual beings having this human experience with a lot of thinking going on. So when we listen to that thinking, that's what it looks like. We have, and I'll get to thoughts in a minute because that was my next massive insight. So when we listen to that insecure thinking, we lose sight of who we really are. And that's when we start believing the thoughts that, you know, I'm not good enough, everybody else is better than me, we just compare ourselves from that tiny little physical human part of us. But when we remember who we are at our core, it's like, oh, I can relax. I am equal to everybody else. And that's what really hit me was that when I get insecure thoughts, which I still do, we're human, we're going to have them. That is my internal alarm system that says, oh, you're up here. You just got stuck up here for a bit. You just forgot who you are. And from that place up here, yes, it makes sense to compare myself. Yes, it makes sense to say I'm not as good as everybody else. But when I wake up to that fact and I go, oh, I'm just stuck up here for a while, and I drop back into that space of who I really am at my essence, I relax and I actually really feel that I am equal to everybody else. And just an amazing little sidebar here for a second. When I was growing up, I mean, even not even growing up, even as an adult with children, I would take my children to school and I'd be like, teachers, oh God, teachers are up here. You know, I'm still a little girl inside. It was like, oh, teachers are, I was, even as a mother, I was still acting very childlike. Doctors, therapists, they were all above me, all like up here. And I do a radio show, I've been doing it, for the last 2.5 years, I've been doing it with just strictly 3 principles practitioners. And I didn't think anything of it, but about 6 months ago, I looked back and I thought, oh my God, I interview all these doctors and psychologists and psychiatrists and all these people. And there wasn't 1 ounce of me that went, oh God, they're higher than me. They're more intelligent than me. Oh my God, I'm scared of interviewing them. Or, oh, I'm interviewing these people that have been around the principles for, 40 plus years. They're more accomplished than me. I'm insecure. It didn't even occur to me to think that way. And I laughed on reflection. I thought, oh my God, I've come a long way. So anyway, so as I said, when I saw the truth of this, not only did I see that I was equal to everybody else, besides my little quirky showing up as I do as a human, but that's sort of the wonderful flavor that we all are. We don't want to get rid of our humanness. We need to embrace it and love it. But just remember, it's not, who we really are. It's just that lovely coat that we wear in this physical world of form. But what I also saw, because I had a history of, abuse, and was that anything that happened in the outside, in the world of form, hadn't hit who I was at my essence. It hadn't damaged it. And I had an incredible, experience of witnessing that. I'll put it that way, whether it was an enlightenment experience or whatever you want to call it. I got to viscerally experience that situation that had happened did not touch me, didn't break me, didn't damage me. It impacted me, bruised me for a little bit, but it didn't break me. And I got to see who I was at my essence, which was incredible. So I saw that I wasn't less than anybody else. I wasn't tainted. That was another label I had for myself, that I was tainted, that I was damaged. let that one go completely. Stop seeing other people as bigger, better, stronger, more accomplished than me, as I said, proving that I didn't even notice I was interviewing all these incredible people. Um, and the biggest thing was as I said, I stopped comparing myself to others. And for the vast majority, I am still human. I'm going to have those low moods when I slip back into that thinking, but I wake up to it so much faster now. So the second insight I had was actually care of Linda Pransky. I was mentoring with her, and I was pretty new to the principles. I had been around it for, for a while, but I didn't really, I was, as they say, my grounding was not that great. And I remember sharing with Linda all my insecure thoughts. And I remember the look on her face. And for those of us who know Linda Pransky, can be quite comical. And she sort of looked at me with that sort of like quizzical look, and she went, "Why are you telling me this?" And I was like, "Well, I'm just telling you who I am, and why I don't think And she was like, "You believe that stuff?" I was like, what do you mean? And she said, "That's just insecure thinking. You don't have to believe that." And I was like, "What do you mean?" My thoughts, my insecure thoughts are telling me about me. They're telling me who I am. And I had innocently, believed those thoughts. They had lived with me for so long. I just thought that they were, who I was. And but what I realized working with Linda was that human beings have anywhere from 60 to 100,000 thoughts flowing through them a day. None of them are personal. They're not ours. They're just the energy of thought flowing through us. Because of how I was raised, in the environment I was raised in, I had sort of grabbed onto a few of those thoughts of like, I'm not good enough, I'm not pretty enough. I had a father that lived 2 miles down the road who never ever acknowledged me as his child. And I thought, as a child, you think it's all your fault. I'm not pretty enough, I'm not clever enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not intelligent enough, I'm not skinny enough, I'm not, and I had a laundry list of not enoughs. If I was enough, he would have wanted to come and claim me as his child. I mean, completely innocently, I thought that. And I can see how I could think that as a child. But what happened is I created a little sort of personality or persona called Dell based on that thinking that I carried through life innocently. And even as an adult, I never looked back and questioned it and thought, well, of course, there was nothing wrong with you. If anything, he was just incapable of loving you. That's if there was fault to lay anywhere, it would be there, not because there was something wrong with me. But innocently, we humans, we don't question these thoughts in our head. We don't question this identity. We just believe that that's who we are. And so it was, I'm so grateful for Linda's sort of look of incredulous, like, what? When I shared some of my insecure thoughts. So what I love about the principles was, let me go back for a second. So I had spent all those years in therapy trying to change my thinking about myself. And I thought the only way that I could change that thinking was to keep improving myself. If I just do this, I will be, a better person, and then I'll feel better. So I was on that treadmill constantly looking to the outside to improve myself. I mean, I often joke that my self-help section or library in my house, which was thousands of books, could rival, the self-help section of Barnes and Noble. I think I literally owned every single book that was on the market. So I was on this path to keep changing my thinking so that I would have a better experience of life. And what Linda helped me see was, it wasn't about changing my thinking. It was about changing my relationship to my thinking. So what I saw through her incredulous look was, oh my God, I don't have to believe that thinking. I don't have to believe that thinking about myself. So it was more, instead of like getting in there and muscling and trying to change it and trying to change myself so I didn't have those thoughts, it was more about just like what I call changing my relationship to those thoughts. I didn't believe it. And another Dickens Bettinger quote, which I love, is he said, the thoughts, insecure thoughts in our head are like the drunk uncle at a wedding. Now, you don't go up to that drunk uncle and say, tell me more. This is fascinating. This is interesting. I want to learn more. You're like, oh boy, give that person a wide berth. They're drunk. They're talking nonsense. And you just ignore them. Well, it's the same things with our thoughts in our head that tell us that we're worthless, we're less than, and all that. We actually can ignore them because they're not true. They're habitual thoughts that just, what happens is that thought just flows through us. We grab on to a few of them, as I said. We make them, mean that that's who we are. But if we just let them flow through us, we could have just as easily grabbed onto thoughts of, oh, I'm pretty great. Oh, I'm amazing. Oh, I'm beautiful. Oh, I'm accomplished. God, I'm clever. We could have easily grabbed onto those. But I do think that our childhood environment that we grew up in rather, can affect the thoughts that we grab onto and latch onto. And then they have a habit of showing up. And that's all they are. It's habitual thoughts. That's all they are. They're not solid. They're not us. They're not pointing to who we are. They just have sort of set up camp like squatters in our head. And they are so familiar to us that we end up just thinking, oh, they're telling me, who I am. So anyway, so once I saw that I did not have to believe that thinking in my head, I did trust Linda. It was hard in the beginning, but I trusted her. And the more that I doubted them, the less prevalent they were. They started to fade. They were, instead of being like in the forefront of my life, getting in the way of me showing up to life and living life, they just became a little thing on the side that sort of nagged a bit. And then more and more they became in the back, and they just sort of faded into background noise, sort of static. Now, if I'm in a low mood, they might come a little more forward, a little more center. But I know now that I go, oh, I'm just in a low mood. So I'm hearing that a little more. I don't have to hear that. And it's like I sort of push it to the side. And I know we don't give tricks and tools in the principles, but I did actually, one of the very first books I ever read was by Richard Carlson, and he wrote it in the 90s. And when I read it, he was talked about, was brought up in the principles community too. His father knew Sid. He talked about thoughts, that you can put them to the side. You can put them even on the back burner. So that's what I started to do. If I would get one of those insecure thoughts, I think to myself, again, Linda, she goes, well, when I have one of those thoughts, she goes, I look at it and think, are you helpful? And so I started doing the same thing. I thought, if I got one of those thoughts, I think, I don't think you're helpful, on the back burner. This isn't helpful, on the back burner. But anyway, the point being that the more that I didn't buy into them, that I didn't believe them to be true about myself, the more they faded, to the point now where I show up to life so differently. And Jen, who has known me for, I don't know, 27 years, something like that, can attest to it. I show up to life so differently than I used to be. As I said, I was shy, insecure. I used to think I was an introvert. I was hiding. It's so uncomfortable, never comfortable in my own skin. And these days, as I said, I host a weekly podcast and YouTube show, interviewing incredible people. I do that. I write a weekly blog. That was another thing. I'm not a writer. I wouldn't even make a comment on a Facebook post. That's how insecure I was about my writing. It's like, now I put a blog out every week. I speak in international conferences. Oh my God, what else do I do? Host webinars like this. I coach groups. I coach individuals. Things that I would never, ever have thought possible until I came across this understanding. And when I saw that I had just, we live in a world created by thought. And I lived in this self-imposed prison of believing these really awful thoughts about myself. And once I realized that I was making stuff up, I might swear here, but that's okay. I basically was making shit up. And if I was making up bad shit, I actually could make up good shit. And I really did. And I just thought, I can, because like I said, those labels of I'm less than, I'm not good enough, and everything, it's just like a cloak that you wear. And we can shed that cloak at any time. Oh, we can wear the cloak and stick some other labels on it, like I'm brilliant, I'm great, I'm really cool, or whatever it is. But the bottom line is we're making it all up. Our identities are made up. They're not set in stone. As I was sharing with Jen just earlier, I took a Myers-Briggs for years when I was younger, always an introvert, always, you know, whatever ever it was. I had to take one a couple of years ago for some other thing, not the principles. And it showed up that I was an extrovert. And they were like, oh, that never changes. No, who you are is set in stone. You're not. We are infinite potential. And as, you know, I'll paraphrase Sid here, but, you know, we are one thought away of a completely different reality. And that's what happened for me when I started to doubt the story of who I was and entertain different ideas about who I was, not who I could be, but who I actually was. I started showing up differently. And that was just I don't know, mind-blowing, magical, just unbelievable for, you know, a former shy, timid, insecure introvert. So that's pretty much, I'm right on time. I'd love to hear any questions anybody has, any comments, any clarification. Makes sense to me, but I realize for people that are new to it might not make as much sense. So I'd love to open it up for questions or comments. You don't have to make a question. Jen, hi, you go.
Hi. Such good stuff. God, there's so much. First of all, I want to just share that, for those of you who don't know, and I had forgotten this, Del is an amazing artist. But I wanted to just share something that came up for me when you were talking about standing next to your art and how you couldn't do it. And you went in the bathroom, and I started thinking, I remembered what an amazing artist you are. And, because for a while you were focusing on that, and now you're a little bit more focused on this. And I immediately went into comparing and despairing, is what we call it in the program. I'm in a 12-step program. And I was thinking, oh God, like there's another thing you do and do well, And I immediately started thinking about how what we were talking about, Del and I met yesterday, and I was thinking, I was sharing how I don't really have a lot of hobbies, and and I am very insecure about what I don't do and what I can't do. And I signed up to take a writing class because I love to write, and I'm actually a pretty decent writer. And I bailed from the class because I thought everybody else was smarter than me and could write better than me, and I can't do this. And I gave myself an excuse that I've got a lot going on right now. But the truth was I was in a lot of fear, and I just relate so much to everything that you're talking about here, because, I too come from a very dysfunctional beginnings, and was given the message, or took in the message, that I wasn't enough, that I wasn't worthy. And I've always thought of myself as someone that had good self-esteem. But what I'm learning in between working with Del and my other 12-step programs and just doing a lot of self-reflection is that most of the esteem that I get or think I have is from external sources. But inside, I still have all of these thoughts about how I'm not good enough, and compare myself to other people and things that they do, whether it be gardening or crocheting or cooking, or, and I can't do that, and I'm not good enough at that. And, and I too have had a lot of therapy, and just keep thinking I have to change my thoughts. I have to change my thoughts. And I know that they're faulty, but somehow they just live deep inside of me. And I'm really excited to learn how to put them on the back burner, and open up myself to discovering who I really am without that kind of negative self-talk that has been my life, you know. And I'm 61 years old and I'm just learning how to do this. But anyway, so I really appreciate everything that you're sharing and so relate to it. Thanks.
That's great. Thank you so much. And yeah, as you know, Jen and I have known each other for many years. She's not only an incredible writer, she's an incredible singer, but it doesn't, as Jen was saying, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much validation we get from the outside when we have this, you know, it's for me, it felt like this sort of bottomless pit that everything I put in it didn't even stay for a little while. It just passed straight through. It just never, there was never, maybe slightly for a tiny bit, there was that elevation in how I felt about myself, but you know, it would wear off pretty fast. And then it would be, okay, what's the next one? I need to fill myself up again. I need to be validated. I need to be complimented. I need to be, you know, whatever it is, you know, to fill that void up. So yeah, thanks, Jen. Thanks so much for sharing that, because it is that, well, gosh, that escaped me, and there was something I was going to say. I'll come back to it when it occurs to me. But yeah, that absolute bottomless pit of needing the outside validation, it will never fill it up. And it is only by, as I say, getting quiet, you know, letting this, because this is what it looks like, as I said, when we got all that mind full of negative thoughts, the more that we don't pay attention to it, the more we don't work at changing it or moving it on or whatever, that we just ignore it, it will move on its own accord. We do settle. We will come back to our innate well-being. We call it our innate well-being. And as we settle, we remember, you know, that Buddha starts coming more into vision again. We remember who we are. And from that place, and only from that place, do we feel the confidence that is innate to us. It will never come from the outside in. It will only be when we connect with who we truly are at our essence that we will feel it. So thanks so much for sharing that. And thank you for the compliment on the art. It doesn't matter how many times I hear it, it's still, I still sort of like cringe like that. But maybe one day I will get back to painting and feel a little differently about it. So I'd love to open up to anybody else. Have any questions or comments you'd like to make? We've got another 25 minutes to go, so.
Well, thanks for that reminder, because I keep hearing that it comes from the source, which is what you're speaking of.
Yeah.
And I remembered yesterday I had an experience that all my needs are met, and like I was free. But then I sort of forgot about it.
Yeah.
But yesterday I remembered that feeling. You know, it's like I was just light. So that's, I really appreciate what you're saying.
Yeah.
And your experiences. I mean, I worked in art and I moved to creativity and well. And I'm much older than anyone else. And sometimes I discourage myself, like, why bother? But, you know, it is kind of where I got my painting, is where listening to Sid, I had a crisis. I started painting. So that's how I found out, or I developed that, whatever it is when you paint, and, you know, not that I think everyone likes it or something, just the experience of creativity. So I'm trying to encourage myself to get on, just talk, do a blog, because that's where I guess my learning, you know, everyone speaks of where did your learning come from? I mean, I listened to Sid in the 70s, but then I see, you know, I just have to catch myself, that's all, comparing. I mean, I put myself down. So I really want to sort of enunciate the source within me, because it's the only way, it's the only road, is really what you said.
Yeah.
And even that, I have pain off and on, but it's better. But the other day I thought, well, if my body is more spiritual, then it probably feels good. So I'm going on that angle rather than feeling the physical discomfort.
Yeah.
You know, so it's a learning experience.
I love what you're saying, Monica. And I also, and having been in spiritual community since I was 21, what I love about the principles is that it is the one sort of spiritual community that I've been in where it really, it's not about sort of spiritual bypassing. It's not about, oh, we are, you know, we're on this path of higher consciousness, we're getting better, we can surpass all our, you know, human experiences. I love it. It's like, no, part of being in the world of form is we do fall asleep. We do forget who we are. And then we wake up and go, oh yeah, just like you said, Monica, you caught yourself yesterday going, oh yeah, I remember who I am. And so we don't get upset or angry with ourselves. We don't get frustrated. We don't go, God, I should know more about, you know, this now. I shouldn't ever feel bad again. I shouldn't ever feel insecure again. It's like, no, we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And the nature is that humans fall asleep. And then, you know, our feelings are our friends, because our feelings are the ones that let us know we've fallen asleep. If we're feeling a little yucky, it's saying to us, oh, you've been believing some of this thinking. You're spending too much time up here and you're feeling it. So when I feel yucky, it's my internal alarm clock. It's just says, oh, Del, you've just got caught up a bit. You started believing this stuff. Drop back to who you know you really are. And sometimes it's like, no, I stay stuck up there for a while, a bit longer, depending on, you know, what mood I'm in, you know, what environment I'm in, you know, my thinking can get a little stickier. But for the first time in my life, I can stand back. I can see what's happening. I can see that I'm buying into that insecure thinking. And just seeing it is enough. Because when you see it, you naturally start to fall back into who we really are at our essence. So thank you, Monica. That's great. Anybody else got anything they'd like to share? Sharon and I are telepathically connected. She knew I was going to call on her. Hi, Sharon.
Hi. Well, when I first came across the principles, it was a relief for me. But as I've been on the journey, the last 4 years, I think what I've come to see now more than ever is I just love being myself. Now I know myself, and it's okay to be ordinary, and it's okay to just do the things that bring you joy, and it doesn't matter if you're doing them at, you know, sort of a lower level in the ego's mind, or a lower level than anybody else. The fact is you're doing them and it's bringing you joy, and also that just raises the level of consciousness for other people as well. Those around you kind of ripples out. If your family members can see that you're happy and contented, and there's, you know, and also you see it in them, you know, you're not pushing your children to strive, and because if you step back, it all seems to unfold anyway. That's what I love about the principles.
Yeah. I love what you're saying, Sharon, and you just reminded me of what I was going to say when Jen shared, and that was about the ego. I used to think that, you know, I innocently used to think, oh, ego meant that you feel really great about yourself, you know, and I kept thinking, why don't I have an ego that tells me that, you know, I'm really great and I'm special and blah, blah, blah. But what I really also began to see is, you know, this ego, which is our personal thinking, is our ego. I actually saw that my ego was trying to help me, trying to protect me. And because, and when it would tell me things like, you're not good enough, you're less than, you're this, or all the things it would tell me about myself, it was actually trying to keep me down. Because it believed that if I stayed down, stayed small, stayed in hiding, didn't get too big for my boots, as my mum would say, I wouldn't get attacked so much. And I wouldn't set myself up to think that I was better than I was. So my ego I actually had this vision of it was almost like I was down on a wrestling mat, and this ego was this giant, great big sort of onyx monster that was had me pinned down, my hands behind my head like this, spitting in my face, you know, you're less than, you're this, you're not good enough, you did it. And when I saw that it was actually trying to be my friend and had actually been with me all my life, as thinking it was protecting me, when I stopped wrestling with it, when I just relaxed and went, oh my God, I don't need you anymore. I can actually sit up, stand up, and be in the world. I don't need to play safe and play small. It literally sort of like, it's almost like it was this heavy black onyx thing just sort of shattered into a million pieces. And it just sort of like went like that and just fragmented and just sort of lay like ash around me on this sort of flat mat of the wrestling or boxing ring I was in. And I literally did. I thought, wow, that was just an illusion. That was just an illusion. And I felt like I could just sit up, stand up, move around without it. But it was making friends with it. It was almost like seeing the innocence in it, seeing that it was just purely something that had felt that it was going to protect me. So thanks for that. You reminded me of that, Sharon, when you said the ego. I knew there was something I wanted to share.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else have anything? Yeah, Jen.
I just have a question. If you could talk a little bit more about, I'm taking notes, and I just wrote, if we try to stay small and play safe, it's our way of trying to protect ourselves from getting hurt. I don't fully understand that. Why do we do that?
Well, I don't, for me,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was one of my books that I had. It was called there's a saying, something like, the higher you rise, the greater the fall. And I think for me, I was just terrified of, because I felt that I couldn't cope, wasn't strong enough, was another one of my things that I thought, I had no idea about my resilience. I had no idea about that. So I was always trying to protect myself. Like, as I said, and there were voices, from my mother, like, don't get too big for your boots. Who do you think you are? Oh, pride comes before a fall. I mean, society tells us all these things. Play small. I mean, my God, that beautiful Marianne Williamson quote, who are we to play small? We're more afraid of our greatness than we are of our smallness. So it was, and the other thing, it's so interesting you say that, because this is another awareness I had. It was almost like, because I grew up, I was illegitimate and felt very shamed in the community I grew up in. It was almost like, I'll get me before you can get me. So I would say terrible things about myself. It was almost like inoculating myself towards the barbs of others. If I already tell myself I'm worthless and whatever, then your words won't hurt me as much, because I've already heard them from myself. I think that played into it. This is why it's so fascinating. A lot of people in the principles are like, now psychology, that I love psychology. I mean, I study spiritual psychology. To me, we as human beings, as spiritual beings having a human experience, humans have psychology. It's fascinating, the things we come up with and strategies we develop to cope with life. And I think it's so wonderful to go back and see where we adopted that thinking and then just pull it all apart and just say, we don't need that anymore. That was innocent. It was a coping mechanism that we developed early on. And we don't need it, because when we know who we are at our essence, like I said, these magnificent, beautiful beings made of resilience, made of innate well-being, made of love, we don't need all those innocent human sort of defense mechanisms that we develop. They can all fall away and we can just show up to life. But I find us fascinating. I love it. To me, it's like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Why, and and we are, for me, we are the sum of our experiences. Yes, I know who we are at our essence, but we are also, you know, the sum of our experiences. But my God, if we can show up being the sum of our experiences and just sort of like own it and just burst out into the world with that, as opposed to, oh, with the sum of our experiences, and I'm really like, I should stay hiding. You know, I often think that, you know, what we perceive as our weaknesses are our strengths. They really are. So the hard things we've gone through are not just that it made us stronger, but it made us more human, made us more relatable, made us more connected to other human beings. Because there's not one of us that have been on this planet that haven't been impacted by some trauma or something. We've all gone through something, but the more that we come together and come out of hiding and share our experiences, you know, I remember, you know, in all my years of therapy, the one thing I got from it was my therapist to say, if I lined up 10 women, they would all feel the same way about this. He normalized my experiences, is what I'm trying to say. I never felt that I never felt that I was terminally broken. He normalized, and that was what was healing for me. I still, you know, I always say the principles were the icing on the cake for me. They were the cherry on top of the sundae. They had me burst out of that self-limiting view I had of myself. But my therapist tried very, very, very hard for many years to see that show me that I was normal. I couldn't see it without the principles. The principles was what helped me see it. But he tried really, really hard, and I love him for that. But so anyway, I would love to open it up to anybody else that has any questions or thoughts or anything that they love to contribute to the conversation. I can tell if I wait a little bit longer, then somebody else is going to say something. Or maybe not. So yeah, you can put, if somebody doesn't want to speak up, if you want to put something in the chat, is there something you want me to, you know, I've got a few minutes left, if you want me to sort of elaborate on something or anything like that.
Could you speak of the psychology? Because I know Sid said psychology is the logic of mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you mean like our, go ahead, sorry.
No, you say, Monica, you say.
No, you go. No, because I'm curious.
You know, I'm not going to get too into it from the perspective of the principles, because for me, I know just from my experience, when I was first getting into the principles, I had, and I won't name names, but I did have some principles teachers say to me, especially when I was going through a very hard time. My mother died, well, but she was the third death in 8 months. My sister died, then my sister-in-law, then my mother. And I was feeling like, and I grew up as a single child with my mother. I mean, I was one of 7 children, but we didn't have a father. So we used to joke, we used to say our mother is, we'd call her Mother, Father, God. She also happened to be an atheist. And I often say that she was an atheist because if she believed in God, then she would have been a sinner. So it was more convenient to be an atheist. I say that jokingly. But she was everything to me, absolutely everything to me. And I was sharing this with a principles practitioner who basically sort of went, why are you telling me this? That's just all thought. That's just all thought. And for me, number one, I experienced it as dismissive. I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel connected. I had no rapport with this person. It was hard for me. And thank God there was something inside me that said, don't bolt. But I could have bolted. I could have just said, this is all a little too simple, a little too simplistic. All, you know, we're all living in a thought created world or reality. So I stayed in, and I do feel that there are some teachers that genuinely believe that going into psychology and going into the past is not helpful. I always say, maybe I'm on the fringes of the 3P community. I really don't care. I saw something that impacted my life and changed my life, changed how I showed up. So I'm going to keep sharing what I saw and what helped me. If it fits into the, you know, principles or not, I really, you know, that it's fine. Everybody lives in their own thought created reality anyway. So if they see it differently, they see it differently. So I do, when I work with people, number one, I love stories. I'm a storyteller. I love people's stories. It's like, tell me your story. Tell me how you've lived your life. Tell me the areas where you're stuck. Let's go back and as I said before, it's like a surgeon. It's like, oh, let me find that. Oh, let me bring that out. And let's like dissect it, look at it and see, oh God, you don't have to carry that. It's like a tumor in you. You don't have to carry that anymore. So you know, as I said, as human beings, we do have psychology. We have, you know, survival mechanism. We have the amygdala. We have instinct. We have so much that I think is valuable and worth looking at, and then looking beyond with the understanding of the principles. But I will never dismiss it as it's all, you know, yes, thought carried through time. Memories are thoughts carried through time. And we may have been through some childhood trauma. And I think to have the awareness that we are re-traumatizing ourselves by carrying those thoughts in time and believing them unintentionally, so innocently. Nobody would deliberately re-traumatize themselves, but they don't see that they have a choice. They don't see that they can experience it differently. And that's where I love to bring that in. But I will be with you and walk with you as long as you need to leave the pain of the past behind. You know, I share what I share. I don't have an agenda. Like I said, I would never, if somebody's in a lot of pain, telling that person it's just their thinking is absolutely, for me, not helpful. And I feel it's disrespectful. So anyway, I did see it on something in the chat, so I am just going to read what this says. Oh, that's lovely. Thank you, Helena. Helena, I'm not sure how I'm pronouncing it properly, but thank you. So if anybody is interested in learning more, a lot of the work I do is with codependency and narcissistic abuse. And obviously we know, you know, the core of codependency is low self-esteem, is the, you know, constantly looking for outside validation. There's loss of a sense of self. So that's a lot of my work. So I have a 6-week program coming up, which starts next Saturday. You can check it out at my website at Adey-Jones.com. I also have another program on the principles. So anybody new to the principles that wants to take a deep dive into that, I do a program. It's an 8-week program with Andrea Vallely. And we start that on April 22nd, and it's fabulous. It's just really, you know, immersed into the principles. There's so much more to see. As I said, I've just, you know, highlighted 2 of my big insights that changed my life, but there's so much more I saw too along the way. So that's a wonderful thing. And yeah, I do, as I say, I do groups and I do individual coaching and mentorships and all of that. So I was lovely having you join me today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something from it. And thank you so much. And thank you for everybody that even if you didn't contribute with comments, and your energy is really felt, and I'm so grateful for it. And
thank you, Del.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Helena. And Monica, I know, Monica, I'm flattered here. You're one of the people that have been around since the 70s. So it's lovely to have you join me. Okay, so have a wonderful rest of your weekend. I know it's nighttime in the UK. So have a wonderful week, and hopefully I will see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.